Welcome to Art Bites. Stay with me, and whether or not you're a Bob Ross fan or Bob Ross hater, you'll get to understand why the art establishment hates Bob Ross. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe and the notification bell, and the next video will wing its way free of charge into your playlist. Yes, you heard it right. The art establishment hates Bob Ross, that lovable, big-haired, long-dead artist with a squirrel on his shoulder and birds eating out of his hand. The man that single-handedly turned millions of wannabe artists onto art. That man who made hundreds of Watch Me Paint videos and not much money in return for his efforts. The man who spawned a company that cloned thousands of mini-Bobs, quickly picked up on his fame to sell the products to do it. I can't be right, surely. How can a man who can send people to sleep with his relaxing dulcet tones and laid-back persona ever be hated by anyone? He must have reduced the sales of antidepressants in his lifetime. Perhaps it's the drug companies that put the knife in, or hairdressers perhaps, keen to move away from the curly perm. Whatever the reason, Ross is hated by those who extol the virtues of what they call high art. Now, stay with me until the end, and I'll explain what I mean. Bob Ross is probably one of the best-known artists on the planet. Yes, seriously, he is. Love him or hate him, he's so famous I don't even have to risk copyright infringements to show you his picture or an image of one of his many paintings. Indeed, people who have never heard of Gauguin or Hans Holbein the Younger have heard of Bob Ross. Those that think Damien Hirst is a character in a horror movie and Tracy Emin is just a very bad hotel room cleaner have heard of Bob Ross. So how can someone so universally loved by anyone without an art degree or any art education possibly be despised so much for bringing his art to the world? Ross sort of slinked smoothly onto the scene in the early 90s with a community TV channel that allowed him to demonstrate his unique way of painting by formula. Not quite painting by numbers, but it was a formula nonetheless. To say it was a slow burn would probably be wrong, but it wasn't until after Ross died of cancer in the mid-90s that his now syndicated show really took off. Millions tuned in to watch him paint his happy little trees and talk to any wildlife that would share the screen with him. He became the painting equivalent of Snow White or Cinderella, surrounded by a menagerie of critters. Does that explain his missing finger? He delivered his smooth and hugely relaxing show to anyone who wanted 30 minutes of Zen-like meditation. In fact, Ross was Mr. Zen. Blessed with a heart as big as his hair, he enthralled viewers while sending them into a deep, relaxing trance. I heard once that surgeons could actually perform open-heart surgery on patients by subjecting them to 10 minutes of Bob Ross. With a huge following, Ross became a household name, of people who wanted to learn how to paint like Ross and those who were perhaps recovering from a heavy night out. They would watch along with him, but therein lies the problem. Ross is a dirty word in the homes of wealthy art collectors and, of course, with the art establishment. Most wealthy art collectors won't buy a piece of art unless some critic has told them that it's a good investment. So if the art establishment slags off Ross, you can bet your enormous plastic palette that Ross's work will be consigned to the trash can marked kitsch art. But why do these wealthy collectors trample over Ross's work in their expensive Louboutins? Well, it's rumoured that only a handful of original Bob Ross paintings were ever sold. Maybe some clever wannabe Charles Saatchi character has hoarded them to release them at a later date and maximize on their value. Whatever the truth, Ross is not rated by the establishment because his work is considered to be, well, and these aren't my words, well, crap. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't send the Rosslets round to my house to do my knees. I'm guilty of spending some blissful chill-out hours watching the Bobmeister myself. I'm just telling you the truth. In his defense, I must say he was damn good at what he did. It might well not be considered high art, but he was the forerunner of the legions of art demonstrators that we now see on YouTube. And whilst many have got their own polished channels, none of them quite manage to combine tuition with an amazing sense of peace and tranquility. The art establishment is full of people with degrees in fine art and PhDs in fine wine. They cannot be challenged. Even those artists in the past who have tried to topple them off their shiny spires have eventually found themselves to be collected by them and therefore become part of the establishment themselves. If you don't believe me, take a look at Andy Warhol's soup cans. But the big thing for the establishment is that they need to buy art that they believe is an investment that they can sell on. And if the establishment feel they can't sell the work of a particular artist, then that artist hasn't got a chance of making a living. So if it's of no value to the art collectors, then it can't possibly be any value to us plebs. Another reason for Ross ridicule is his working methods. We never saw Bob Ross working on plein air. He didn't paint household objects and fragment them into unrecognizable shapes. He had the audacity to just paint imaginary landscapes. He did this with a handful of badly beaten and demon exorcised brushes and some worn out palette knives that he probably nicked from his wife's cutlery drawer. But he perfected a technique that worked for him and, as it turns out, worked for many others too. Is that wrong? I could give you the names of thousands of artists who do the same thing. They use the same polished techniques that they've learned over the years and they repeat them over and over and over again. Is that wrong? Surely, being able to develop a unique or identifiable style is what collectors really like, because they know that if they purchase a piece of work by a certain artist, they know what to expect. It's that recognizable style that often makes an artist become something of a name. Watercolor artists do it all the time. So do portrait artists and anyone working in a particular medium. They learn their tips and techniques and they keep regurgitating them. Perhaps that palette knife painting I've got of Snowdonia isn't actually worth the 30,000 that I paid for it. I wish. But even Banksy pretty much uses a formula. The difference is Banksy is considered to be a vandal. He commits criminal damage every time he spray paints one of his stencils onto a wall. But that's okay. He's anti-establishment. But actually, you can buy Banksys now in galleries. So what does that tell us? Let's face it, if you want to be a big name in the arts, you need to do something different. You need to be controversial. You need to be shocking, anti-establishment. Of course, that's until the establishment take you on board and you become one of them. But Ross simply blended his colours using something he called liquid white and developed this simplified system of painting of rocks and trees with tricks that can never be considered acceptable in one of the big galleries. And the reason for that is because they think, well, anyone can do it. And if anyone can do it, it devalues what they've got on show already. But I've already shown you how hypocritical that argument is. But you see, I'm sure Ross would be quite happy with his position within the art establishment, or rather on the outside of the art establishment, because he managed to get millions of people to paint, to take an interest in painting. He'd be delighted to see millions of his Rosslets painting his happy little trees and his snow-capped mountains reflecting in scraped lakes of paint. So Ross's work, quite simply, is too simple for them. I know millions of Rosslets would argue with that point. But if painting from the imagination is a problem, then where does that leave surrealism? Let's face it, the establishment rules. If you want to buck the establishment, you could do a lot worse than buying work by an artist who is outside of that establishment. Maybe someone like Bob Ross. But it just goes to show that for all its art bollocks, that's what David Lee from Art Review called the artist's statements that accompany works in galleries. Art is only worth something if an art critic or a collector says it's worth something. Look at the way the art world swarmed over the YBAs in the early 90s. That's the Young British Artists. What happened there was that one major collector bought up all the works in a student graduation show. That one collector just happened to be Charles Saatchi. Now, if I was cynical, I'd probably say that Charles Saatchi proved that he can sell sand to the Arabs or even ice to the Inuits. But that would be cynical, because a marketing expert like Charles Saatchi surely wouldn't make the art world work in his advantage, now would he? Because as soon as he started collecting this work, the value of that work became astronomical. Anyway, if you've stuck with me through this, I hope you take just one thing from it. If you get your fix of watching Bob Ross videos or using his licensed materials and his plastic pallets the size of the island of Anglesey, then good for you. Whilst Ross will probably never be accepted within the hallowed halls of the Tate or the National Museum, I still can't help but admire what he achieved in his lifetime and the way that he managed to draw so many people into the world of fine art. And for that, I applaud him. Millions now paint because of him. And that can only be a good thing, surely. We all improve with patience and practice. Sometimes we reach heights we never thought would be possible. If you don't try, you'll never know. But the fact that these amateur painters also collect artwork has got to be a good thing too. For me, it's a win-win scenario. So whilst Bob Ross's name might be whispered in a Voldemort manner in high art circles, I thank him for sending hundreds of eager young students into the classrooms of fine art in colleges and universities. Okay, they might have started out wanting to paint like Bob Ross, to spray painting murals on walls or making untidy beds, or even blood-filled skulls that are frozen and kept in glass cases. So to Bob, may you rest in peace. So what do you think? Please feel free to leave comments. Let me know whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me. It'll be great to get your opinion. Don't forget to please like and share and subscribe to the channel. Bash that bell and I'll see you soon.